What if the explosions that rocked Ukraine last night were not only attacks, but a coded warning to the entire world? On the night of November 10th, 2025, the war entered uncharted territory. In a matter of hours, Russian forces launched a ruthless and coordinated wave of missiles and drones, crippling Ukraine's infrastructure and targeting the Darokostiantyniv airbase, a linchpin for the long-anticipated deployment of Western F-16 jets. To grasp the magnitude of this attack, let us recall previous moments in history when single nights changed the course of entire conflicts. For instance, during the Second World War, the bombing of Coventry in November 1940 turned a single British city into a symbol of both devastation and resilience. That night, like this one, became more than a local event. It sent shockwaves around the globe, shaping alliances, strategies, and public opinion for years to come. Satellite images and frantic eyewitness accounts revealed infernos, silent radar installations, and shattered hangars where fighter jets were supposed to be sheltered. As the scale of the assault became clear, reports of devastation deep behind the lines poured in, fueling a fierce battle of narratives. Russian state media boasted of precision strikes and claimed the outright destruction of F-16 facilities, while Ukrainian officials acknowledged losses but withheld crucial details. This information blackout is reminiscent of the early days of the Gulf War, when both sides tried to control the narrative, leaving the world guessing about what was truly happening on the ground. Suddenly, a staggering figure swept through online channels: 10,000 Ukrainian casualties in a single night. Is this horror fact, or a psychological weapon meant to break spirits and sway international opinion? In the digital age, where information travels faster than any missile, such numbers can have a devastating impact, regardless of their accuracy. During the Vietnam War, inflated casualty figures were often used to shape political will at home and abroad. Now, in Ukraine, both sides understand the power of a single, shocking statistic. With chaos and confusion blurring the lines, the truth remains elusive, and each side fights to control the story. This is no mere escalation. It is a global test of resilience, information warfare, and technological might. Are we witnessing the opening move of a decisive winter campaign, a deliberate attempt to force Western intervention, or a calculated show of dominance from Moscow meant to spread fear and doubt? Misinterpreting these signals could have catastrophic consequences. The world risks missing signs of a widening conflict, suffering economic aftershocks, and falling prey to carefully orchestrated disinformation. Recall how, in July 1914, a series of misread diplomatic signals and clashing narratives turned a regional crisis into the First World War. Today, the stakes are just as high, if not higher, given the reach and speed of modern communication. To grasp what truly unfolded and what it means for the future, we must sift through the noise and decipher the deeper messages hidden within this night of fire and shadow. But how real is the damage, and who truly controls the narrative? To answer that, we have to examine the evidence and the information war now raging in parallel with missiles and drones. Consider the role of disinformation in the Second Chechen War, when both sides flooded the airwaves with conflicting reports, making it nearly impossible for neutral observers to understand the real situation. In Ukraine, the same dynamics are at play, only amplified by social media and instant messaging apps. Why did so many see the attack coming, yet no one could stop it? The night of November 10th, 2025, shattered any illusion of predictability in the Russia-Ukraine war. In the weeks leading up, Russian forces had intensified their campaign, wave after wave of airstrikes, swarms of drones reaching deep into Ukrainian cities, and the deliberate sabotage of power grids across several regions. This was not a single outburst, but the culmination of warning signs that many believed could not be ignored. Intelligence chatter grew louder, and military analysts sounded alarms, but Western leaders offered only silence. Perhaps most telling was the absence of any official word on the operational status of the promised F-16 fighter jets. Russian sources boasted of strikes on the very airfields where these jets were supposed to be, while Ukrainian officials dismissed such claims as temporary setbacks. The Kremlin, meanwhile, declared its offensive a final operation, leaving the world to interpret conflicting narratives. Let us pause to consider the historical echoes. In the Korean War, both sides repeatedly claimed imminent victory, using rhetoric to mask setbacks and confuse their enemies. The lesson: when narratives clash, truth becomes a weapon. Meanwhile, NATO members are not idle. Surveillance flights over the Black Sea have multiplied, and border patrols in Poland and Romania have more than doubled in a single night. These moves are not just gestures. They reflect growing fear that the conflict could leap Ukraine's borders, threatening the fragile order of Eastern Europe. The last time Europe faced such uncertainty was during the Balkan Wars of the 1990s, when regional violence threatened to spill across borders, drawing in outside powers. This moment feels different. Risks are no longer contained to maps or classified briefings. Misreading the signals now could mean underestimating the scale of escalation, or missing the first signs of a much larger global shift. As power grids flicker, and both digital propaganda and genuine destruction ripple outward, the world is forced to reconsider what victory and defeat mean in the age of information warfare. With the stage set, the central question emerges: is this escalation just another turn in a brutal cycle, or the beginning of something far greater? It is on this knife edge that the world now balances, uncertain whether to intervene or watch as the boundaries of war are redrawn. The next move, by any side, could redefine the conflict for years to come. In moments like these, history teaches us that hesitation can be just as dangerous as rash action. In 1938, the Munich Agreement was intended to prevent war, but in reality, it emboldened aggressors and led to greater disaster. How could a single night expose the boundaries of both Western and Russian power, and who truly stands to gain from this evolving battlefield? On the night of November 10, 2025, Russian hypersonic Kinzhal missiles struck with a speed and precision never before witnessed. These warheads shattered Ukrainian defenses, targeting airfields where Western F-16 jets, dependent on flawless radar and support crews, now stood exposed. The very aircraft meant to turn the tide risked becoming liabilities under this relentless assault. Yet these missiles were only the opening act. Russian electronic warfare units unleashed chaos, jamming Ukrainian communications and blinding drones overhead. In an instant, Ukrainian forces were cut off, unable to coordinate strikes or call for help. The battle shifted not just through destruction, but through a paralyzing silence. This kind of technological disruption echoes the German Blitzkrieg, where rapid, coordinated attacks overwhelmed defenses before they could respond. Analysts now call this a new hybrid doctrine: maximum disruption with minimal troop engagement. Russia's approach fuses hypersonic firepower, electronic sabotage, and psychological warfare while keeping most soldiers behind the lines. The aim, not just to destroy machinery, but to unravel the systems of trust and command that keep an army whole. Frontline cities like Pokrovsk and Kupiansk have become unwilling test sites for this new kind of warfare. Each explosion, blackout, and rumor is amplified by propaganda, with both sides racing to shape what the world sees and believes. Now, information travels as swiftly, and wounds as deeply, as any missile. The true danger is not just lost ground or equipment. If Ukraine and its Western partners lose the race for information and technological dominance, the aftershocks could reverberate far beyond the battlefield. A collapse of trust could fracture alliances, unsettle economies, and threaten the very foundation of Europe's security. Think of the cyber attacks on Estonia in 2007, which, while not physically destructive, rattled the entire NATO alliance and forced a rethink of digital security. What follows is more than a contest of military tactics. The next choices facing global leaders will determine not only the outcome of this conflict, but the future shape of our world. Will Western powers double down on their support, risking direct confrontation, or will they seek a negotiated settlement, possibly at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty? The world is now watching as alliances are tested and new vulnerabilities exposed. The events of that night demand a closer look at how power is projected, protected, and ultimately contested. In previous conflicts, such as during the Cuban Missile Crisis, the ability to project credible power while avoiding catastrophic escalation was the difference between war and peace. The current moment is no less precarious. Are we teetering on the brink of a managed stalemate or inching toward a global disaster? Tonight, the world stands at a crossroads, with multiple futures poised to unfold. Decisions made in the coming days could set the course not just for years, but for generations. Let us map three possible scenarios. The first, a harsh winter offensive. Russia ramps up its attacks on Ukraine's energy grid, plunging cities into darkness and pushing households to the edge. As the cold deepens, supplies of fuel, electricity, and hope grow thin. If these strikes persist, Kyiv may have no choice but to ration power, sparking unrest, refugee surges, and a humanitarian emergency that could spill across Europe. Consider the winter of 1941, when the Nazi assault on Moscow stalled not just because of military resistance, but because the Russian winter sapped morale and resources. Cold and darkness are timeless weapons. The second scenario, a tense pause. Both sides, exhausted by grinding attrition, might be pushed, willingly or not, toward negotiations. Military lines freeze, but nerves stay taut. Ukraine's allies could press for compromise, while Moscow claims victory and tries to lock in gains. Yet even this uneasy calm is fragile. A single misstep, a drone straying into NATO territory, or a Western aircraft downed over the Black Sea, could reignite chaos in an instant. Recall the accidental shooting down of Korean Air Flight 007 in 1983, which nearly triggered open conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States. The third, and most dangerous outcome, escalation. Skirmishes along the border, or a stray missile landing in Poland or Romania, could draw NATO directly into the conflict. History shows how minor incidents can trigger major wars. With every passing day, the risk of an uncontrollable chain reaction rises, threatening to pull Moscow, Washington, and the world into the abyss. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914 is a stark reminder of how a single event can ignite a global conflagration. At the same time, energy analysts warn that a broader winter conflict could drive up global prices, sending heating bills and inflation soaring from Berlin to Beijing. Leaders everywhere are bracing for unrest, knowing that a cold, hard season stirs public anger. This war, no longer just a regional fight, now presses against the limits of the global system. Information warfare, cyber attacks, and psychological operations are as critical as firepower. Misreading these scenarios would be disastrous. Economic shocks, political turbulence, or a sudden slide into open war. These are immediate threats, with consequences for every family around the globe. Remember the oil crisis of 1973, when a regional conflict in the Middle East sent shockwaves through the global economy, triggering inflation and recession across continents. As each hour passes, the fog of war thickens, and the stakes only climb higher. The next moves, by Moscow, Kyiv, or the West, could redraw the boundaries of power for a generation. Inaction or miscalculation could mean a missed opportunity for peace, or a slide into unthinkable chaos. How do you separate fact from fiction when the next strike could upend everything? In an era where information can strike with the force of a missile, vigilance is your only shield. Sensational numbers, like tens of thousands of casualties or sudden, sweeping victories, call for doubt, not instant belief. Examine every headline, interrogate updates that trigger strong emotions, and remember, confusion can serve both sides in a conflict. Modern warfare reaches far beyond the front lines. Energy outages, market tremors, and empty shelves often signal escalation long before official announcements. If you see fuel prices shifting, currencies wobbling, or abrupt government orders, ask, what do these shifts truly reveal about the conflict's direction? In 2008, the global financial crisis exposed the interconnectedness of markets, showing how instability in one corner can ripple outward, affecting millions who may not even understand the root cause. The psychological front is just as real as any battlefield. Misinformation is crafted to confuse, drain, and manipulate your understanding. That is why critical thinking is not optional. It is essential. Verify claims across multiple sources, seek out international voices, and look for original footage or direct statements. Never rely on a single channel, especially when narratives collide and stakes are high. Crises now unfold across several fronts: military, information, energy, diplomacy. Each is a battleground for influence, a lever for pressure, or a channel for shaping perception. Headlines alone hide the deeper shifts in play. Surface analysis rarely exposes what is truly at stake. If you recall the Arab Spring, you know how rapidly social media can turn rumor into revolution or expose lies that governments would prefer to keep hidden. Drop your guard, and you risk more than confusion. You could fall prey to propaganda, lose money, have your reputation damaged, or miss the early signs that might have given you and those close to you precious time to act. The price is not just uncertainty. It can be real financial loss, harm to your name, or even threats to your safety as the crisis spreads. As the world watched events on the night of November 10th unfold, another layer of the conflict was already in motion, hidden from plain sight. Understanding these signals is the first step to staying ahead. For example, during the annexation of Crimea in 2014, it was not the tanks on the streets, but the sudden disappearance of politicians, strange cyber outages, and rapidly shifting media narratives that signaled a new reality. The next decisive moment in this war may unfold right within your social feed. Will you recognize it when it comes? Consider setting up alerts from trusted international news agencies, following independent analysts, and using fact-checking tools to evaluate viral claims. Small, practical steps can make a world of difference. In a world where headlines vanish in seconds and timelines blur the lines between truth and deception, vigilance is no longer optional. The escalation on the night of November 10th, 2025, was not only about rockets and borders. It was about who controls the narratives that shape your reality, and how swiftly those narratives can shift your perception and actions. Each new explosion, every supposed breakthrough, and every viral number is a test. A challenge to your ability to filter truth from noise. As Moscow parades images of triumph and Western analysts warn of unseen dangers, the true battlefield is your awareness. Today, each of us is a frontline observer, forced to decode what is genuine, what is distorted, and what is meant to leave us paralyzed by uncertainty. Complacency is costly. If we drop our guard, we risk more than missing the next headline. We risk losing our grip on truth, our resilience against psychological warfare, and our ability to respond when the next crisis flashes across our screens. The territorial battle may rage oceans away, but the struggle for your perspective is happening here, within your notifications, your timelines, every minute. This is not a call to paranoia. It is a call to informed skepticism. In the weeks ahead, competing narratives will clash more fiercely than any tanks, and stories will be weaponized with all the force of missiles. Your greatest armor in this new age, where clarity is the first casualty, is to stay alert, to question, and to think critically. So, what can you do? For one, practice digital hygiene. Scrutinize sources before sharing. Discuss events with friends and family, comparing perspectives and challenging assumptions. Participate in online forums that value evidence over emotion. Petition your representatives to support transparency and independent reporting on global crises. As the world balances on the edge of yet another turning point, remember, the next crisis will not announce itself. Only those who remain sharp, skeptical, and informed will be ready for whatever comes next. Our ability to discern, adapt, and act wisely is the true measure of resilience in an era shaped by information, uncertainty, and rapid change.